to introduce themselves. Oh, thank you, Jack. So my name is Michelle Caruso. I work on the Food Council team. I lead our policy and advocacy work. And I'm a big women's soccer fan, so I love watching the U.S. women's national team, and it'll be an interesting year with a whole new group of players that haven't been on the international stage very often. So that's my favorite Olympic sport to watch. I'm going to turn it over to Jack and then Leah, but then everyone else, I welcome you to introduce yourselves in the chat. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. For those that don't know me, my name is Jack Ewert. I work on staff here at the Food Council on our policy initiatives as well as our council member program. My usual, and we talked about this in a meeting today, so some people have heard this, my usual is road cycling. I've really enjoyed the Tour de France over the past couple of weeks, so hopefully rolling that into the Olympics. But I also just enjoy the random sports that I never really pay attention to that pop up at the Olympics, and it's always fun to see what it is and where the people are from. Especially being from here, it seems like every sport there's always someone from this region that's popping up and doing very, very well. So it's always a little bit of pride as well, of course. So always fun to see the random events that people put a lot of work into and probably don't appreciate me calling them random, but I find them to be interesting and to learn more about them. So I'm going to turn it over to Leah next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Hunter, and I've been interning with the Food Council for almost a year now. I think like maybe 9-10 months. And I've been working a lot with the advocacy team. And I'm a big women's soccer fan too. I used to play soccer, but when the Olympics roll around, I always become the world's leading expert in gymnastics. So that's what I will be watching.
Leah, I love that fun fact, and I can't wait for you to provide me with all of your commentary as we.
I will. And none of it will make sense or be right, but I'll have it.
Learning new things every day. So I think we were going to hear a welcome from our executive director who's been with the organization for about 6 months, Naya Chajane, but I don't see her on the call. So Naya, if I'm just missing you, feel free to come off mute, say hi. Naya may have a conflict and might be joining us later, which is totally fine. So I'll move on to our upcoming events, and then we'll turn it to our featured speaker after that, which is why we have such a great turnout today. So thanks everyone for being here. Councilmember Balcombe, I hope you feel like this is a good group that's excited to hear about your perspective and priorities. So quick updates. We just some upcoming events that are happening that the Food Council is leading. We have our resident and community gardening collaborative tomorrow at noon. You can find all of these on our events page to register, but we will be hosting some featured speakers that have recently received the Office of Food Systems Resilience Gardening Grant recipients of that program. So we'll be learning more about what projects are being funded and what that will mean for us in Montgomery County. Then on August 12th, we have our food security community call, which many of you attend, and is, I think the topic will be focused on children age 0 to 5. So, we'll have a kind of a special topic area for that call in August. Just a heads up, if you registered, you may have wondered why there wasn't an advocacy call listed for August. And it's because we don't usually host advocacy calls in August. We know a lot of folks go on vacation. And so we take a break for that month. And so we will see you again in September, the end of September. And then I just wanted to give a heads up, since we aren't going to meet in August, that as a food council, we have 24 volunteer food council members that represent different areas of the food system and provide our staff and organization with expertise and advice, and really help support us in our advocacy of the food system and then all the work we do across the food system. And that application process is going to be opening very soon. So if you have ever thought about becoming a volunteer food council member with our organization, we'd love for you to apply. Terms are 2 years. The term begins in January, and there will be, kind of a short, there'll be a review process, and then certain folks will be asked to interview. And each year we're kind of trying to match the folks that are rolling off the council, what expertise they had, with new folks coming on who may share a similar expertise, to make sure that we're getting a wide variety of perspectives from our network and community. Jack, anything to add about that?
No, not at all. I'm gonna drop in the chat though, a link to a video from last year. I believe we did it about this time last year where one of our council members actually joined us to speak about the process and their experience as a council member. And we were able to save that video and it's up on our YouTube page. So if just it can maybe answer some of the questions. And then if there's any more specific question, I just encourage folks to reach out to me directly and I'll make sure my email gets into the chat as well.
And I know some of our council members are here. Mary Bennett, I see off camera or on camera, Carol Jones, Kelly Dordan. I see Kate Medina, who is was a council member, now a board member. Maybe it's both. I always forget. So anyway, thanks to our council members. And yeah, if you've ever thought about it, feel free to reach out or look for that correspondence coming out soon. So with that, I am going to introduce I'm going to just double check that Naya has not joined. And no, she has not. So maybe we'll hear from Naya later, but if not, it's okay. So I'm going to turn it over to our featured speaker, Councilmember Balcombe. We're thrilled that she is able to share her time with us today. There's been some timely updates that involve her district that we're excited to hear about related to the food system. And I'll just read a short bio and then turn it over to Councilmember Balcombe. After her remarks, there'll be an opportunity for open Q&A. So please think of some questions. Feel free to get them ready in the chat, or we'll also use the raise hand function to kind of structure that Q&A. So just feel free for folks on the call that have questions to write those down or jot those down, and we'll have a chance to get to them. So Councilmember Marilyn Balcombe serves as the District 2 council member on the Montgomery County Council. Prior to joining the County Council, she was the president and CEO of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce. As the CEO of the Chamber, Marilyn was actively involved in land use planning, transportation, and economic development. She has worked with thousands of businesses, large and small, to help create a vibrant local economy. On the council, she serves on the Transportation and Environment and Economic Development committees, and we're thrilled to hear from her today. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Councilmember.
Great. Hi, everyone. So nice to see you, and so nice to read all the names of who's here today. I know many of you, and very happy to be here. As Michelle said, I serve on the Transportation Environment Committee, Economic Development, and District 2 is Germantown, Clarksburg, Poolesville, Boyd's, Dickerson, Barnesville, North Potomac, and Darnestown, and basically 2/3 of the ag reserve. So I cover a lot of the farm areas, and it's fantastic to represent the ag community. And speaking of which, we've got the farm tour this weekend. So it's both Saturday and Sunday. I just looked at the route. I created my own route. And most of the farms are open both Saturday and Sunday. But if you're going out, you want to make sure that if you're going out on Sunday, you want to make sure that some of the farms may not be open. But it's really a fantastic way to see the ag reserve and to meet some of the farmers. It's great. And thank you for putting that in the chat. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to start my timer. I could talk all day, so I just want to keep tabs of my time. So I'll go through several things, and then we can also, if I miss anything, or if you want to go further into things, I'll come back. Budget. The first thing I want to talk about is, of course, we have the Office of Food Systems Resilience, and their budget was roughly $14 million, which covers 4 FTEs. And Heather's doing a great job with the food system resilience. And it's one of the reasons why the county created this office is because it's just so complicated. There's so many aspects to our food system. And of course, the Food Council is very much part of that system. And so I think that it's going according to plan, and that's great. But aside from the Office of Food System Resilience, there's really a lot of funding that goes into food delivery. And that's primarily through the Health and Human Services, but also through the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. So there's funding that flows through both of those departments. For instance, Health and Human Services, their funding this year for food service consolidation hubs was funded, and winter school break for children's food programs, those were funded, and among a lot of other things. A lot of grants come through the county for a lot of our nonprofit organizations. Some of you are on the call, certainly the hub. In my area, we've got both the Up County Hub and WUMCO, which does the Western Montgomery, and then of course the Capital Area Food Bank, MANA, etc. So there are lots of funding going through to lots of different entities, and which is great. There's never enough. We hear that a lot. One of the things that we really faced this year was our hubs, and our hubs that were created. The Up County Hub, for instance, was created during COVID and received a significant amount of COVID funding. And the need didn't go away after COVID went away. Of course, COVID's resurged in the past couple of weeks, but so the county really understands the incredible service that's being provided through our hubs and wanted to make sure that they were kept whole. So from the operating budget, that's pretty much where we are. And of course, we'll continue to look at it throughout the year and for next year. The capital budget, what's interesting is the compost facility, which I'm really excited about. It's complicated, right? So there are a couple aspects of the compost facility. One is it's just something that we should be doing, right? We should be composting as much as we possibly can. Roughly, and I want to, Holly Mancuso is on the call. She is my point person for Health and Human Services, including food service, and she put some talking points together. So we have over 600,000 tons of municipal solid waste that goes to the transfer station. That doesn't even count what doesn't go to the transfer station, right? So that's 23% of our waste is compostable, which we're just simply not composting. So we need to do it just because it's something that as a community we should be composting, but it also has an important tie-in to the incinerator. And the county executive has made a commitment to close the incinerator, but we really can't do that unless we significantly reduce our waste. And a very easy way to do that is through composting. So, in this budget, we have budgeted the creation of a compost facility. Most likely will be in the Up County, in my district. We do have in Dickerson, there's currently a composting facility in Dickerson for yard waste. So it makes sense that the food scraps composting facility go there. It also is co-located at the incinerator. And so that's the most logical point. However, there is an important discussion with the Sugarloaf Citizens Association. Way back when the incinerator was created, the county has a formal bindable agreement with the Sugarloaf Citizens Association on that site. And so that the county's in communication with the Sugarloaf Citizens Association to come to an agreement on this site. There are a couple pilot, and when we talk about composting, we're talking about a countywide infrastructure for curbside recycling, so curbside collection and composting, which is really exciting. There's a pilot happening right now in Silver Spring and Rockville and Potomac going on. And we got some preliminary results on that. And so the assumption is that we'll have countywide curbside composting. So stay tuned on that. I'm sure you will. Another thing that is important to the Ag Reserve is we have a zoning text amendment coming before us for a final vote this Tuesday on the overnight stays in the Ag Reserve. While this doesn't specifically intersect with food production, it does have it's completely tied into farming. And this came to us 6 or 7 months ago with the idea of having incidental overnight stays on farms. And the connection being that this would be part of the farm experience, and the farmers who were asking for this to be allowed, looking at it from two perspectives. One is a revenue stream to help with profit margin on a farm. And so the more profitable a farm is, the more sustainable they are. But also as a way to introduce the Ag Reserve and farming to a much broader community, to come to the farm and spend some time in the Ag Reserve. So the initial ZTA that came out was a bit too much. I didn't support it. My counterpart in the east side of the Ag Reserve, Dawn Lutke, she didn't support the initial ZTA. And so she and I worked together with the community to come up with a much more, I guess, a lot more guardrails, a lot more specifics to just really identify what specifically we were talking about. It's ZTA 2402. So that's the one that we put through. We worked with the Countryside Alliance, Sugarloaf Citizens Association, the Ag Advisory Board, the committee, the Ag Preservation Advisory Board, the Montgomery County Farm Bureau, Montgomery Ag Producers MAP. We had a town hall with 100 or so people. We received over 300 emails on this subject. I didn't even count the number of phone calls that I had with members of the community. So we came up with what we considered a compromise bill. So basically what we've come up with is, and I'm gonna look at my notes. The farm has to be at least 25 acres, and we're allowing camping and recreational vehicles with restrictions. So if you have 25 to 100 acres, you can have 5 units. And if you have over 100 acres, you can have 10 units, only 5 of which could be RVs. So it's very limited in terms of how many campsites are allowed on your property. And all this is conditional use. So it's not by right, it's conditional use. So any property owner who wants to do this has to go through the conditional use zoning hearing, right? Only 5% of the property can be used for camping. or 5 acres, whichever is smallest. So we're talking about a very small portion of land. No heating, ventilation, ACs, or kitchens are permitted in sleeping quarters. Guests can only stay 3 nights. So somebody can't come out and move. You can't live there. It's only 3 nights. Setbacks, 100 feet setbacks from any neighboring property, and 125 from the center of any public right of way. So it's not going to be right up against another person's property. We added yesterday on Monday, we added no stream beds or floodplains, and no trees can be removed for this purpose. So that's kind of where we ended up. And the expectation is that this will go to full council on Tuesday and for a full council vote. I don't know if we want to take any specific questions for that, or whether you want me to just barrel through. Michelle, I'll let you know. I'll let you decide.
I would just barrel through and folks
Okay.
can jot down their questions and we'll have the Q&A all at once. And that
Okay.
way we hold ourselves to time a little
Okay,
better by
super.
compartmentalizing. Yeah.
Yeah, super. Okay, so just a little bit about farming and the farms. We have, as you probably know better than I, 93,000 acres of ag reserve, over 500 farms. Most of those farms are producing food products. We have some equine farms that don't, but most of our farms are food producers. I've been visiting many farms, and it's great to see what's happening, and also different sizes of farms. And different. I was out at the alpaca farm, which is such a sweet place. I was at the White Acres, the 1 acre farm, which is more than 1 acre, to see their compost facility. They have a great on-farm composting setup there. That's great. Of course, I've been going to Butler's Orchard for 30 years. My daughter's 30 years old, and I've been going to Butler's Orchard for 30 years. So that's been great. But then also visiting AfriThrive and some of the other the tiny farms. So it's just great to be out and about. We've had at least 1 tour for people in the county and the county council to go out on a tour. It's been great. One of my favorite programs is the Farm to Food Bank program. I love that program, and I think that that's a way. It's just such a win-win program because it allows the food distribution centers to get fresh produce, but as importantly, it provides predictable funding for the farmer. And so people often talk about farmers markets as a way for small farmers to sell their produce, which is great. And everybody loves a farmer's market, but it's not predictable. And so much of it depends on the weather on a Saturday morning. And so the Farm to Food Bank really does provide sustainable, predictable funding, and sometimes significant funding depending on the size of the farm. So I love that program. I would like to see that just continue to grow and grow and grow. Food is Medicine is another program that I think is fantastic. And so I just think it's important to have more awareness of these programs, because I think that I know about them because this is my district, and so many of the farmers are involved and engaged. But I just think it's important for everyone in the county to know what a great job the farmers are doing to help feed our community. And I think that's really important. We looked at some of the new and expanding programs, just looking at the childhood hunger grant programs. In April, the grants came out specifically looking at organizations that help to end childhood hunger. I think those are really great programs. The community schools, the Title I schools, the food pantries at those schools are so great. I've been able to visit many of the community schools, and it's not just a pantry, although that's such an important part, but it really is to provide parents with a lot of wraparound support. So it can be financial literacy, diapers, help with navigating the school system, but a choice pantry is also part of that. And what's great, what the schools have found is that parents, particularly with language difficulties, language differences, they will come to the school to come to the pantry when they've never ever been to the school for any other reason. And so not only is it serving a very particular need of helping families feed their children, but also it's breaking down this barrier of having parents come to the school and interact with the school. So I love that program. And then some of the other programs, Shepherd's Table does prepared meals. Rainbow Community Development Center does prepackaged bags. So What Else has on-site food pantries. Of course, the Up County Hub provides the snack bags. So those are all great programs. I already mentioned the Food is Medicine program. SNAP outreach. I think that one of the things that we need to do more work on, making sure that everyone's eligible for SNAP. I'm on the Transportation and Environment Committee, and we just learned that if a family is eligible for SNAP, they're eligible for 50% reduced fares on Metro. And I know that there are families out there that aren't aware of that. So we talked at the committee about how to get those words out. One of the things that I'd suggested was that that WMATA talk with our food distribution nonprofits, because very often there's significant overlap between SNAP and families receiving food distribution, and just an awareness of, did you know you could get fare reduction? So I think that's important. And also from that perspective, SNAP being allowed at farmers markets. I think that's still an area where not everybody knows about. And also not only SNAP, people receiving SNAP benefits aren't aware of it, but people at the farmers markets aren't aware of that. And I think that might be where the Food Council might be able to help share that information and jump through any hoops that need to be jumped through to get those to get that SNAP benefit. But I think that's great. And then of course, our AfriThrive just received a grant. The Islamic Center of Maryland, they're looking at culturally relevant fruits, vegetables in their community garden, and how to get that out from a culturally competent distribution of foods. I think that's really fabulous, and it's whenever I see programs like that, it's just so great to, that people are addressing our cultural diversity in Montgomery County, that, to look at that. So I think that that's really important. And so, I think that, you know, you all are in that space every day. I think it's just important to make sure that people are aware of all the resources that are available and understand the grant process and the grant timelines and how to take advantage of grants. And then from the perspective of food recovery, we've talked a lot about that. I think that Community Food Rescue and MANA are really working to coordinate that food recovery to make sure that whatever food can be salvaged is, and distributed in a healthy way, in terms of food safety. I think that's important, to look at that. So what else is also actively involved in that food recovery? So I think that's important. I just wanted to touch briefly on the marketability. You know, we have a lot of resources for small businesses in Montgomery County, and food growers, food producers may not be aware of those programs. So anybody out there who is running a business and needs some support, please let us know, because you know, we want to make sure that you have those resources available. So and that's through our county executive's office. There's a business resource center that's pretty great. So I think that's, you know, I know how hard, you know, I know how complex the food system is in Montgomery County, and I appreciate everything that everybody on this call does to make sure that our families are fed. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Balcombe. Jack, I chatted you separately that my internet glitched briefly, so if I hop off, then please take over. It's great to have a wonderful team. Feel free to raise your hand. I see we have our first hand, or drop your question in the chat. Everyone on this call knows that I'm happy to fill in our time with my own questions, because I always have lots, but I did just want to follow up on some of the points the Councilmember mentioned. You know, we have MANA Food Center on the call. There's a couple folks, so I'm sure they were thrilled to hear about Farm to Food Bank, and the Food Council was involved in the expansion of that program as well. So I'm thrilled to hear that you continue to support that. I hear you on SNAP and WMATA, and certainly something that we will consider hosting at our upcoming food security community call, because that's certainly information that our SNAP outreach team pushes out to potential folks that are eligible but not enrolled for SNAP. So interesting to hear that that was new information to the county council, and you know, we will work hard on getting that information out there. And I did just want to flag a recent development at the Food Council, and that we'll be sharing more in the upcoming months, but we recently received funding again to sort of relaunch our MoCo Made program, which supports food and beverage businesses. I knew that'd be of interest to you. So more to come on all of that, but I'm going to stop there, and I welcome everyone else's questions, because this is really about, you know, our network getting to know you, Councilmember, and getting to hear your thoughts about their issues, not just our issues at the Food Council. So I'll start with Lorian, who is one of our staff. So Lorian, with that in mind, you know, just feel free, go ahead and ask your question.
Sure. Yeah. And thanks, Michelle, for that lead in about the MoCo Made program. Marilyn, thank you so much for being here and for your emphasis on serving food and beverage businesses. As you know, our MoCo Made program works with local food and beverage businesses. And we are just always hearing about, you know, sort of the paperwork burden of, you know, getting through those legal compliance issues. And I totally applaud the council recently for that streamlining effort you all have done with restaurants. And that just sort of brought to the forefront for me during that conversation, did you get a sense that maybe a similar streamlining effort could happen for, our food and beverage businesses?
Yes, so, and thank you. So we know that many of our processes need to be streamlined. And we're very eager to do that. So let's talk offline about what specifically, and so we just did a streamlining of our restaurant inspections, right? So that came to us specifically through restaurants saying, hey, I've got a better idea. Why don't we do it this way? And so, yes, very interested. And we can set up a time to talk about that and what specific steps, and we're happy to put it through. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to turn it over to Michael and then Wendy.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep, we can.
Hi, how you doing? Councilmember, thank you for your time today. I appreciate your comments on WMATA and SNAP, as Michelle already mentioned. I was wondering, in your work on the Transportation Committee in regards to WMATA's Bus Reimagine program and Ride On Reimagine, has there been any concerns in your district about how any changes in the stops and service may affect access to food?
Yes. Thank you. So yeah, we have two programs going at the same time, Ride On Reimagined and the WMATA Better Bus. And we will most likely see some pretty significant changes. And recognizing that not everyone is going to be happy because there may be routes that are discontinued in order to reroute buses to more densely populated or areas that are used more. My concern with that is that looking at the routes in our rural areas, I'm concerned about even if a bus is only used by a small number of people, that is the only way that they can get to resources, including food resources. So we'll be watching that very specifically. Both DOT and WMATA, MCDOT and WMATA understand that not every bus route has to, the criteria for keeping a bus route isn't only ridership. It has to be making sure that there's equitable transportation available to everyone. So thank you for bringing that up. And yes, we're monitoring that. For me, it's even more salient because of the geographic our vast geography up in the ag reserve and in my district. So yeah.
I can say I was in two of the Ride On Reimagine focus groups, and that's different for WMATA. They're going at the same time and they talk. The issue came up in regards to the districts that are, far from my daily life. I do know there's access issues. So it came up doing the Ride On Reimagined focus groups. Yeah,
and it's not only food, but healthcare is a big issue to access to healthcare via transit. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Michael. I will plug that the Food Council participates in the Better Buses Coalition, and that coalition's always looking for folks that are interested in advocating for a better bus network that serves a variety of needs beyond just number of riders and density. So if folks want to learn more about that, feel free to reach out to me and Jack.
Great, thanks.
Can
I just flag, Holly, please follow chat because I can't follow chat as quickly. So just as someone's following chat, that would be great. Someone on my team. So thank you.
Of course. And thanks, Holly, for all that you do. Wendy, then Philip.
Thank you so much, council member, for being here. And my question is sort of, I guess, on a taking us away from transportation, but I've read some of the work that the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice has done, and a few of the comments on the ZTAs and the full report on transferable development rights that the Office of Legislative Oversight has done. And I'm curious if the council is taking any of that up at some point regarding the racial equity or racial inequity as for the land ownership and accessibility to land in the agricultural reserve. And as I just threw in as a comment, kind of related, but as a comment from Michael's question, access to the agricultural reserve for people without vehicles, maybe in the down county. I think it's a little bit connected and just making the agricultural reserve a little bit more accessible to more people. Just wondering if the council's gonna take that up.
Sure. So from the racial equity, social justice aspect, you know, it is the vast majority of landowners in the ag reserve are white legacy landowners. And so there are programs that I saw Carolyn pop up on the chat. I always get the name of it wrong. The land lease program.
Montgomery.
Right. So that program is a way to get farmers to be able to access land to have farmers in that is a successful program. I would love to see that expanded. So yes, we're aware of that in terms of what programs we can have to change that. I think that's a matter of who owns property and how to facilitate the property ownership. The issue of transfer development rights is a major issue right now in the ag reserve, and I'm assuming that a lot of people understand the ag reserve and transfer development rights. It's a very complex system for how to compensate landowners for giving up their right to develop their land. We are at a crossroads right now with that program, and my understanding is the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee will be looking at that in the fall. I will be very much involved. I'm assuming Don Ludke, my counterpart on the east side, will be looking at that too, because there just aren't. The exchange of transfer development rights 40 years ago is much different than it is today. And so we need to really look at that, that program. And thank you. The land link link is in the chat. So so thank you, Wendy, for that. Yes, and you had one other final question, and I can't remember what that piece was.
Yeah, I was sort of just commenting in response to Michael's question about transportation within the agricultural reserve.
Yeah.
I was asking about access to the
yes. So we had started, the Economic Development Committee had started the discussion on agritourism last fall. The conversation got derailed a little bit because of the overnight stays ETA. But we need to come back to an agritourism plan and what that looks like and how, because there's an important balance between how do we expose people to the ag reserve in an educational way without overpowering the ag reserve, right? So I think that's going to be a really important discussion. You know, some people point to Loudoun County to say, wouldn't it be great if we were like them? And other people point to Loudoun County and say, oh my God, you know, what can we do to make sure we're never, ever, ever like them, right? And so this discussion of how do we expose people to the ag reserve without destroying the ag reserve is a really delicate question.
I'm wondering also about the access for people in the Down County area, particularly maybe in the eastern part of the Down County, to access the agricultural reserve for employment, for work opportunity.
Yeah, you know, that is interesting. And we haven't looked at that. That's an interesting point. Thank you.
Thanks. Marilyn, I'm not in your district, but I appreciate what I've been learning about you and your proactive stance to solicit, input from stakeholders. Witnessed this around recent zoning text meeting and your open meeting that I attended. So thank you for your leadership in that kind of capacity. I think it's key to involve people who are affected in the decisions that affect them. Principle number one. I'm part of the Food Resilience Working Group, which is a working group of the Climate Coalition. We helped publish this lead article about our unfolding food emergency. I note that the Atlantic magazine earlier this month had a similar article called The Sad Future of Grocery Shopping. We reproduced in this publication a chart that came from the Council of Governments based on 2015 data that showed that probably on average, we grow less than 5% of the table food that we eat in this region, while we are agricultural, a lot of it is commodity crops. I did a back of the envelope calculation a few years ago. If we turned every square inch of front yards, backyards, rooftops, median strips, forests into growing table crops, we still would only be able to feed about 25% of our population. So this is somehow lost on proponents who are making projects like commercial scale solar, not realizing the vital importance of that primary, secondary, even tertiary soil for our future food needs. I'm curious to know, I have not found it yet, anywhere where the county is tracking this kind of issue closely. I mean, the Food Council obviously is very much involved in a lot of the programs that serve the most needy, but I haven't found any kind of strategic planning for the long range, the overall system. We are seeing and will see, I expect, this summer's impact, global temperature rise on crop production all around the planet. We're going to start to see shortages and certainly price spikes, continuing the trend that already began a few years ago, pre-COVID, of increasing grocery bills. So I guess my question to you is there a way for the council to perhaps get behind, an ad hoc group, maybe a futures commission? I know there's a proposal floating around for such that would look at these sort of long range threats and opportunities with regard to our food needs for the region and determine what we need to do. As many of us here know, restoring infrastructure for cold storage, for farmers markets, for transportation takes years, if not decades. And I think the threat is evolving much faster than that.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? And thank you. So I think I'm not sure, and I'd have to check with Heather to see if something like that is already taking place in terms of really looking at tracking our capacity versus our needs. And it's difficult because especially when you look at our ag reserve, and we have 93,000 acres in the ag reserve, and how little tabletop crops are being produced. And that really is a matter of economies of scale and the expectation of what a tomato should cost when you buy a tomato. And I think that, there's a complete disconnect between, everybody loves to go to a farmer's market and they buy one or two things, and then they go to Giant and do their weekly shopping. And there's a disconnect there. So I do think that it's important to have something like this. And so I can check to see if anyone currently is tracking. Michelle, you may know the answer to that. Not sure. So we should find that out. But then the other piece of the looking at, we've been trying to get this aggregate facility up, we need more than one to help with distribution. That would help our small farmers so much in that production. There was something else you said towards the end, and I didn't write it down. I think the long range threat, I think, is soils, of course, and your comment about solar. So we are maybe not tracking the soils, and the Office of Ag is really a place that we need to look at what they're doing in this regard. But the solar, there are two different jurisdictions. There's the state and the county, and we are at odds, right? And so right now, the state has jurisdiction over our over solar farms. And so we're in the process, the county right now is in the process of determining, the county council and the county executive, we're in conversation about how we're going to respond, whether we're going to respond together or individually, and what those responses are going to be in terms of stating very clearly that we feel that we should have jurisdiction. And our current code is to deny solar farms on soil type 1, type 2 soils. So so we understand that anytime that we need to be cautious about that. So we are tracking that, and we've got 3 now. We have 3 proposals in for solar farms. 2 are in the ag reserve, 1's just outside the ag reserve. All 3 of them are in my district.
Thank you, Philip, for the excellent question. Thank you, Councilmember Balcombe, for your willingness to answer questions from a variety of stakeholders and a variety of perspectives, and your support and knowledge on these issues is always impressive to me, your ability to kind of pivot across the entire food system. So thank you so much for explaining your perspective, sharing your thoughts and priorities. I think it's a really wonderful way to connect with food system stakeholders. And I encourage folks on this call, to reach out to Councilmember Balcombe's office if you have additional questions or thoughts that you want to share. Holly dropped the email link or the email in the chat earlier. There's a few other comments in the chat that relate to some of Councilmember Balcombe's comments from Catherine from OFSR and some other folks. So just wanted to express my appreciation for your time today. We know that you're very busy, your team's time and prepping you and all of that. And so just really, really appreciate taking the time today.
Sure, thank you. And if I haven't visited your facility, please, invite me. I'm happy to come out. And would love to see you. And I hope to see many people on a farm tour. So
yeah, this weekend. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Okay.
So I'm just going to turn it over to Jack real quick to share. Maybe don't share the slides, Jack, but just kind of, And then in the meantime, if folks have updates that they want us to include in the notes, feel free to drop those in the chat and we'll capture those and share out with the larger network when we send out our notes. But Jack's going to give a quick update on the way our field trips sort of impact our advocacy work to encourage more folks to join in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that, Michelle. And I echo the sentiments. Thank you, Councilmember Balcombe, and everyone for the great questions as well. As Michelle said, I just wanted to jump on and just talk kind of quickly about how as a food council, we use opportunities such as site visits and, as Michelle said, field trips and all those things to really inform our advocacy. And what I really like about this topic is that it doesn't always have to be advocacy focused. So I think two great examples are recent events that we hosted late last month or both, I guess, earlier this month. And then last week as well, we were able to host events from working groups that have nothing to do specifically with advocacy, if you look at our page, but really inform our advocacy. So one of those was actually of the composting facility at 1 Acre Farm. So we clearly went on the same tour, Councilmember Balcombe recently. But we used it as an opportunity to bring together different organizations. And again, this was an initiative of our food waste and recovery working group. So not specifically laid out to be an advocacy site visit, but it allows us to bring together a lot of different people into a room. So we were specifically looking at the composting setup as well of the on-farm composting, and we were able to be joined by representatives of the Office of Food System Resilience, the Office of Ag, Montgomery County Public Schools, the state's department of both Maryland Department of Environment and the Maryland Department of Agriculture. And we see these field trips as just a great way to have these informal conversations that sometimes just don't take place over Zoom, to the natural questions that come up when you're in conversation in person and things like that. And we're trying to use that to benefit our advocacy. We believe that our advocacy is at its strongest when we can tell real stories and we can share anecdotes of things we are learning on the ground and literally when it comes to composting in the dirt and things like that. And we think it's just a great way to continue to expand our advocacy portfolio, I guess is the word that pops into my head. But our advocacy, our ability to be advocates, I think is the best way to put it. Rounding out our knowledge on areas that maybe we aren't the experts on, but when we put a bunch of people in a room together and conversations start flowing, we're able to really learn a lot. Another one of those, which is a great example, and I'm going to have Lorian, if she has a minute, just jump in on it. We recently hosted as part of our local food procurement working group, a visit to the UMD dining services. And I was wondering, Lorian, if in 60 seconds you could give a quick little summary of that.
Yeah, sure. No, we were very happy to be welcomed by the University of Maryland Dining Services and shown around by Mike Fry, the Senior Associate Director there at the University of Maryland Dining Services, and just learned how they're so able to get so many local fresh farm and fish products into their dining establishment. I think some of our big takeaways just have to do with they have a very good way of consistently like revisiting their menu and their recipes to incorporate in their local food offerings. They have a bunch of connections through their own state, the state agencies to connect with farms. One thing that's really impressive is that they're using the Certified Farm and Fish program to connect with farms, and then they buy from all sorts of sources for local food, but they buy from a lot of the hubs we're familiar with, like 4P Foods and Dreaming Out Loud. They also go through a lot of the classic distributors, but they also connect with farms directly, which is amazing. And they even connect with on the Eastern Shore. They connect with the fish distributors directly as well. So yeah, it was just a very good learning experience on how to really do that on the ground. They're doing a great job of it, since it may be the 20% local offerings may be coming down the pike for certain types of institutions. It was a good example of how institutions can do that well.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, thanks, Jack and Lorian. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We are at time, so thanks again to Councilmember Balcombe and her team. Thanks to folks that asked questions. Thanks to our team, and we'll see you in September. Feel free to join us for field trips. We send them out kind of broadly across our network, and we will share notes and recording within about a week. So thanks, Leah, for taking those notes, and we'll see everyone in September. Thanks again.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. Great meeting.